We're going to continue today talking about Maya, your favorite topic, right? And we started late today. And I thought, well, let's just start. I did some research this morning, and I found some things Prabhupada said from his letters, which are slightly different than what we've been reading. And because we're starting late, then I thought, let us begin with reading. But I see, because we're starting late, everyone has to get the notices. I was thinking we won't chant, but I guess we should maybe chant a little bit while we're waiting for everybody. So let me get ready. We'll have a short kirtan for the transcendental pleasure of Radha and Krishna and all the devotees. Krishna Govinda Hari Murari He Natha Narayana Bhaja Vasudeva. We'll have a dramatic kirtan. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. So we have a great show in store for you today. We have some amazing letters we're going to read. Amazing points Prabhupada makes in his letters. The letters are unique in many ways, invaluable in many ways. Excuse me for 1 minute. So I just have to bring the letters up. I went through the letters this morning, and some of the letters were very repetitive. It sounds like it's raining. Very repetitive. So I eliminated some of the more repetitive letters and then found some letters that took us up to 1974. There were no letters after that. I don't know why. So this is from 1972, February. What I found in a lot of these letters was other points not directly related to the topic of Maya. I think we've read so many letters, and Prabhupada has clearly explained the nature of Maya. So those things will come up, but a lot of these letters have other points that I think are important. So I chose them for that reason. You have described how you once fell down because you saw discrepancies in our philosophy. Actually, our philosophy is perfect. But because there are discrepancies in your mind, at that time, you may have thought something wrongly about our philosophy. That is one of Maya's favorite tricks for convincing us to stop our spiritual life and enjoy her. And so this point is interesting because sometimes, let's say we find what we think is a defect in our philosophy. And then sometimes we find what we see as a defect in devotees' behavior, or we find a defect in the way ISKCON is run, or we find something disturbing. And sometimes we leave the Sangha of devotees because of that. And usually if you leave the Sangha of devotees, your spiritual life suffers. Either a little bit or a lot. And sometimes you even give up your practices, your sadhana. And so that's the point Prabhupada's making. It says Maya will come in and say, well, you see this is actually wrong. Or you see this, devotees are actually wrong. Or this is a contradiction in the philosophy. Or Prabhupada said something that's not politically correct. Or he said two opposite things. Or this point of philosophy doesn't make sense. Okay, sometimes naturally doubts will be there. And we have to discuss. We have to discuss this amongst learned devotees. What does this mean? I'm understanding it this way. Is that correct? Is that right? Or I know I'm misunderstanding it, but I don't have the right understanding. So we discuss it. We get strength by discussing. Krishnadas Kaviraj says, don't shy away from discussing controversy, but by discussing it, we will clarify our doubts. But sometimes it doesn't happen. And so Prabhupada's making the point, look at the result of your lack of faith in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we may say, well, I don't like ISKCON because I was mistreated, or devotees do this or that. And then that propels us back into Maya. So obviously our thinking has caused this consequence of now we're engaged again in material activities. So that's, any way that Maya can put some doubt in your mind about the validity of our philosophy, the validity of ISKCON, the validity of devotees, then if we buy into that, this is the result. So I thought that was significant. I think it's always important to look at the result. And just like people often ask me, what do you do when you see difficulties in ISKCON? Or did you ever feel like leaving? Or did you ever feel like giving up Krishna consciousness? And my thought has always been, what would I do if I wasn't in Krishna consciousness? And I know the answer. And it would, if I wasn't in Krishna consciousness, if I wasn't serving Prabhupada, who would I serve? I would do the same thing I'm doing now, but it wouldn't be for Krishna. It would be for name, fame. What do they say? Name and fame, same old game. Another teacher, he calls it FFA. Fame, fortune, what does he call it? Fame, fortune, and applause. FFA. If I'm not in Krishna consciousness, then I'll be running after FFA, fame, fortune, and applause. Or maybe there was a first F was something else. Because applause and fame, it's the same thing. Something like that. Anyway, I think it's a significant point that there may be apparent discrepancies. We need to clarify those. If there's a lack of faith, we need to discuss. We need to get clarity, because if we lose faith, then Maya says, oh, very good. You're mine now. I have you. And then we engage in material activity, and that's often what happens to those who lose faith or those who become very critical of devotees or ISKCON. And then it kind of naturally, they don't find a place in ISKCON. They don't believe it's true, or they don't like the devotees or the way the movement is run. And oftentimes they no longer associate. And generally when they don't associate, their Krishna consciousness wanes. So I'll read that again now that we've discussed it. At least I thought that was an interesting way Prabhupada put it. Actually, our philosophy is perfect. But because there are discrepancies in your mind, at that time you may have thought something wrongly about our philosophy. That is one of Maya's favorite tricks for convincing us to stop our spiritual life and enjoy her. If you ever have questions or serious doubts, you may ask the GBC or myself. And so far, you're telling me that some other devotees discouraged you in the past. This is another point. I also had trouble with some of my godbrothers, but I never let it affect my service, because when one becomes fixed up in devotional service, he never allows anyone else or any condition at all to hamper his service to Krishna or discourage him in any way. So this is I really like this, because this is a common problem, at least a problem for many. This devotee was writing Prabhupada that they were discouraged in the past, and that they were discouraged by some devotees. It happens. Welcome to the material world. I empathize if you've been discouraged, but it happens, right? Excuse me. You know, good things happen and bad things happen. So Prabhupada is saying, yeah, that also happened to me. But then he's making an important point. And I think you could relate this point to anything. Anything that's important for you, materially or spiritually. You won't allow the obstacles to stop you. You know, like a boy falls in love with a girl and then he sings a song, I would climb mountains for you. You know, I would cross oceans for you. I would jump off buildings for you. Because that love is so valuable that if I have to jump off a building to be with you, I'll do it. If I have to risk my life to be with you, I'll do it. Because so I think we take it in that way, that Prabhupada saying, yeah, I was discouraged also. But because our goal is to serve our Guru Maharaj, and our goal is to love Krishna, even the discouraging things don't discourage me. Even the discouraging things don't discourage me. Because I want Krishna and I want to serve my spiritual master. And so in order to serve my spiritual master, if I'm going to serve him, I can't allow myself to get discouraged. So I don't know if that helps you, but I kind of feel like there's a gear in our brain. You just switch it, and once you switch it in, then it means, okay, I'm not going to let anything discourage me, because if I let something discourage me, how will I enthusiastically serve my spiritual master? So I've got this kind of protective device in my brain that when discouraging things come and hit me, I just don't allow them to affect me, because I know if I do, it's going to affect my service to my spiritual master. And my service to my spiritual master, our service to Prabhupada, is the most cherished thing we have, and I don't want anything to touch that. And also, my goal in life is to be Krishna conscious, and I know if I become discouraged, it's going to affect that, and I don't want anything to affect that. So it's kind of like Prabhupada saying, yes, I had reason to be discouraged. They discouraged me, but I didn't allow it to discourage me. So it's like that saying, there's this little gap between what happens and how you react. Excuse me, there's a gap between what happens in your reaction, and the gap is how you process what happens. So, what happened, not necessarily because something that happens is bad, does it have to have a negative effect. That's basically what Prabhupada's saying. Okay, what happened is bad, but I kind of have this interface that takes the bad and neutralizes it so it doesn't affect me. Something like that. Maybe we have to create that. Or maybe the neutralizing interface is Bhagavad Gita. I have this neutralizing interface. So bad things come to me, it goes through my interface, and then it comes out harmlessly. It doesn't affect me. So I think that's the way we understand what Prabhupada's saying. I can't allow anything to discourage me. So let's go on and read. I also had trouble with some of my godbrothers, but I never let it affect my service. Because when one becomes fixed up in devotional service, he never allows anyone else or any condition at all to hamper his service to Krishna or discourage him in any way. So you can take it as he never allows anyone else or any condition at all, could mean any condition, or because Prabhupada said any condition, then it seems like it means he doesn't allow anyone or anything to at all hamper him in any way, just not affected. So you must become convinced like this too by preaching constantly and having Sankirtan, and you will very quickly attain the supreme perfection of life. Very quickly means the end of this life. As for your question about celibacy, if you want to remain celibate for life, I have no objection. That's an interesting way of answering that question. Instead of saying, yeah, great idea, fantastic, that's the goal of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada saying, if that's your decision, that's what you want to do, certainly, I wouldn't stop you. Interesting. I think they're married and they don't want children. I think that's the case. So he's saying, if you want to remain celibate and not have children, I won't force you to have children. I think that's more of the context. So I read this example, and I think this is important for us. When we do devotional service, we're not often conscious of our advancement. Sometimes we're conscious that we're not advancing, and that can be discouraging. And I read this example. I posted this on Facebook last week. It was by a Tibetan monk talking about sadhana, and it was really, really good. I don't know how I got this article, but I would say 90+% relates entirely to us, if not 100%. So he gave this example, which I really liked, is when you boil milk, when you boil water, you zip a big pot of water, you turn it on, and for a while you just look at it and it looks like absolutely nothing is happening, and you're thinking, not that you would think, but you could think, this water's never going to boil. There's no sign, there's no steam, there's no bubbling, there's nothing. It's just, you're looking at water and thinking, what is going on here? This water is never going to boil. Actually, there's a lot going on that you can't see. It's heating up, and at some point it will boil. So he said sadhana is like that. Sometimes you don't see much effect, but over a long period of time, you do see the effect. And this is something that Prabhupada has said a lot, which is, I think, maybe something we question or doubt, because Prabhupada is saying, you continue this way, you'll become Krishna conscious. You will see Krishna, you'll dance with Krishna, so many things. And then you may be thinking, that's encouraging, but doesn't seem like it's happening to me. So you continue. The water will boil. And you can't get better at Krishna consciousness if you give it up. Out of frustration, oh, I'm not very Krishna conscious, it's not working. I'm not happy, I'm not this or that. A lot of those things will manifest later. That steady happiness, that steady taste, that it will not necessarily manifest soon. It'll be more sporadic, more conditional, depending on the temple you're in, association you have, and so forth, the service you have. But when you're older, it's a sign of advancement. Nishta, ruchi, asakti. You'll have taste, you'll have attraction. But you have to stick around and do the process to let the water boil. And during that point of time where it doesn't look like it's boiling, then we could think, yeah, I know Prabhupada says all these things, but it's so hard to believe because I look at myself and it doesn't seem like I'm moving very quickly anywhere. No, you are. The holy name works. Don't underestimate the power of the holy name. Even if you don't consciously experience much, it's working under the surface. So, Prabhupada has said that so many times. Just keep, devotees would get discouraged all the time. Just keep going. We're always getting discouraged. Where are the results? I started this business 20 years ago. There's no money. Doesn't seem like I have any money. No, just keep going. Business will be successful. Just keep going. And as I said before, and I've said many times, do you have a better alternative? So because there's no better alternative, I just keep pursuing Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a pure devotee. What better way to spend your life than taking shelter of a pure devotee and serving him and thereby getting Krishna's mercy and helping Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness. The movement he dedicated his life, he gave his life to, he risked his life. What an honor to be able to help him, even if there's difficulties, even if you have to do austerities to help him. What an honor that is to be able to help Prabhupada. What other greater thing could you ever conceivably do with your life? That's the way we think. So even though we might be discouraged by devotees, we just keep going because what else is there to do? That's the idea. So I'm going to stop periodically after I read a letter or two and discuss it and just check. Because I'm reading, previously when I had my phone, I had my computer, and I could look at you and look at the text. But now when I look at the text, I don't see your comments. Yeah. Look at the result of your lack of faith. I mean, anytime you're not doing your sadhana well or there's some problem, look at the result. That result, it's scary. And we don't want that result. But we see that result. I have a valid reason for engaging in sense gratification. Well, what is it? Well, I had a problem with the devotee and I don't want to, submit myself, etc., etc. And then the result is, what do? Maya comes in and says, okay, let's party. And then she gets you. So we have to see that way, what's actually going on. In the name of using my independence or intelligence, I may end up in a big mess. Yeah. So Kishore Mani is saying, I think most people leave because of the institution, not because of philosophy. You are correct. The people leaving because they lack faith are more of the minority. The people leaving because of the institution, bad relationships, they weren't treated well, is more common. That's true. But still, doubt in the philosophy is dangerous because it opens you up. As Prabhupada said, it opens you up to Maya's influence. And then when we're in Maya, yes, we know what happens. So Shravani is replying to Kishore. Institution of ISKCON is made of individual devotees. So how each of us deals with others does matter. So each of us can help other people stay, yeah. And if you see someone's been mistreated, then you should try to help. It's also our responsibility. I just did a very interesting workshop. It was a workshop on child protection, and this workshop is designed for leaders. Every leader, temple authority is supposed to take this workshop, at least in America, in Canada. But I'm sure in every country they have the same workshop. And basically, what it was saying is there are certain symptoms of child abuse, not just a child screaming with a parent running after it with a stick. There are so many other symptoms of child abuse, and if you see those symptoms, then it's your responsibility to report to authorities what you perceive as being child abuse. And so there's a whole list of symptoms. It can be physical damage, it can be emotional damage, it can just be general neglect. Parents are not watching their kids are playing in dangerous places. It can be so many things. So the whole point of that was it's our responsibility to do something. It's not just the parents' responsibility. Sometimes the parents are negligent. Maybe a temple authority is negligent of his people under his care. So we want to do what we can. And so sometimes that's part of it. If someone is not being treated well, if we're in a position to do something, then we should try. Can't always be successful, but at least we can try. Krishna Karshani says, is it possible that a devotee, after years of being a devotee, did not make any advancement and is worse than before becoming a devotee? Anything's possible, but I don't think Prabhupada would ever say that you're worse off. I think, you did devotional service, so you're better off. But I think you mean externally, like could they become worse of a person or worse off materially? If you become very offensive, it has very negative effects. And you'll read in Shastra that when you make offense, you lose all your piety. You can become bewildered, clouded in intelligence. So yeah, it's a little, you have to be careful. You have to be careful, especially when you're associating with advanced devotees, not to commit offense to someone who's very dear to Krishna. But one time, a devotee was speaking about the 10 offenses, and the first offense, to blaspheme he said it was, the first offense was to blaspheme those pure devotees or great devotees. And Prabhupada said, no, all devotees. It doesn't mean just the topmost, it means all devotees, to blaspheme any devotee. So that's important. We've talked about this before, it's important. So what you say is possible, that you could become worse off in the sense as you become inimical. We've seen that. Some devotees have become inimical. Usually neutral towards Prabhupada, inimical towards ISKCON leaders. Maybe slightly negative. They understand Prabhupada's position. They still have some sense of who Prabhupada is. So generally, even if they lose some faith, they generally don't criticize Prabhupada. They criticize devotees. Maybe they would criticize, not that Prabhupada did anything wrong, but he trusted people who did something wrong. You could criticize that. So, yeah, it's possible. I'm always conscious and concerned that I would not, if I want to please Prabhupada, then I certainly don't want to offend anyone who's dear to Prabhupada. And sometimes we offend Vaishnavas, and well, if we point out a defect, that's one thing. But if we offend a Vaishnava who's dear to Prabhupada, then we're offending Prabhupada. So we have to be careful. I have a story. It's a beautiful story. I think you really like it. Such an amazing story. Prabhupada was in Hawaii, and when Prabhupada first went to Hawaii, it was Govinda Dasi and Gaur Sundar who were the main people who were helping Prabhupada. And previously, I believe in Montreal, they were serving and helping Prabhupada. Gaur Sundar was quite a scholarly type. And so they helped establish, mainly Hawaii was their main service in establishing a temple and getting Krishna consciousness movement going in Hawaii. And Prabhupada's nature was that anyone who served him, he had so much appreciation for, genuine appreciation for anyone who gave their life in his service, which is, of course, natural that you would appreciate such people. So Prabhupada, Gaur Sundar left, and Prabhupada later came back to Hawaii, and Gaur Sundar came to see him, or Prabhupada, I believe actually Prabhupada asked. Gaur Sundar came, he had long hair, long beard. And Prabhupada said, is there anything that I did to cause you to leave Krishna consciousness? Is it, like, can we make up for this? Or what did I do? Because sometimes Prabhupada would ask, did I do anything to cause you? Or what can I do to make you come back? This happened on different occasions. It's amazing. You kind of don't envision Prabhupada in that position, but he had great affection and love, especially for those early devotees, because they were so close. It was like, you could see, it was like his own son. And Gaur Sundar, he didn't say anything. He was just staring at Prabhupada. And I don't know exactly what was going on in his mind, but he didn't say anything, and then he left. And after he left, Prabhupada said, he is a big rascal, but I still love him. But I love him anyway. So Prabhupada had great affection. Calling him a rascal, but asking him to come back and saying how much he loves him. So Prabhupada loves Gaur Sundar. Don't say anything bad about him, even though everything he does is bad. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing now, but even if everything he did was bad, he's very dear to Prabhupada. And so, one thing to say what he did is bad, okay, just objectifying. But be conscious how you feel towards a devotee. What you say and how you feel don't always equate. Like, I may say, this man is a thief, doesn't mean I hate him. I'm just pointing out he stole a candy bar. And I grab him by the hand and I bring him back to the grocery store and say, this man stole a candy bar. You should make him pay for it. Not that I hate the man. So we may point out some devotee has done something wrong, but if that devotee is dear to Prabhupada, don't dare speak ill against him. Don't dare feel bad towards him, because if Prabhupada loves him, we should love him also. And we can safely say Prabhupada loved all his disciples, even the rascals. Jamuna's sister, Janaki, one day she went to Prabhupada and said, I have to go. I don't know exactly why. And Prabhupada said, is there anything I can do so you won't leave? And she said, no, Prabhupada, there's nothing you can do. So she left. There's an interview of her now on Prabhupada Memories, you can see. It seems like she is in Krishna consciousness, or at least in Krishna consciousness while she's speaking. Anyway, we're all on the path, and we all have our challenges. So I would take your question, Krishna Karshani, as a warning to be a little careful in how we deal with devotees, because it could have some damaging effects on us. It's possible. You know, one of the things we see, that occasionally a devotee, he turns against ISKCON in very, I don't want to say violent ways, but verbally violent ways. Very, very blasphemous, very, very critical. And there's one particular devotee I see sometimes on the internet, and there's a lot of hatred within him, or vengeance, or resentment, or all three. And I didn't know him before he was a devotee, but generally speaking, when a devotee is engaged in devotional service, they're not full of vengeance. They're more tolerant and sincerely trying to serve. So yeah, this is this one devotee would be a good example, and probably you know of others who've become very, how should we put it? I would imagine they've become more vengeful than they were when they joined, it seems. So that can be a reaction. Shoimani says, I agree. Now, I also mean that leaving the institution does not always mean leaving Krishna consciousness. There are many pure devotees outside of ISKCON. Yeah. Leaving, what I was referring to was leaving the Sangha of devotees. There's all kinds of Sanghas. Some people can't make it in ISKCON. It's a fact. We would encourage them to stay. And sometimes they find other association is better for them. And so if they have association of strict devotees, they will progress in their Krishna consciousness, no doubt. We would rather all work together, one big family, strong. And but outside the Sangha of devotees, Prabhupada said, I believe in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you can't make advancement. I think that's obvious unless you're very evolved in your Krishna consciousness, living without the devotees' association makes it basically impossible. And Prabhupada said that association is vital even for advanced devotees. So it's not that advanced devotee thinks, well, I'm so advanced, I'll just live in a cave. Although sometimes we see they did. But particularly for us, Prabhupada said even on the very elevated stages of Krishna consciousness, the root cause is association, even for advanced devotees. So that's a reality. And if we're without that association, there will be consequences for sure. Jayani Tai says, reason people leave, I think you mean leave, not live, because of being secluded in the temple, because of one sect of people. Not a lot of preachers to help. Everyone wants to only interact with people from their own country. Yeah, maybe some neglect, what you're referring to. But whenever you see a problem, do what you can to solve it, or at least become a solution in your own behavior. There's so many years of, this is from Jyotirmaya, of personal research in almost every possible path that humanity can offer. And some thousands of euros spent, I found the most advanced spiritual science on earth in Krishna consciousness. And the funny thing is that happiness is only €5 cost, the cost of a simple japa. There's no better way to cut it. That's a good one. You can spend thousands of dollars on books and videos and workshops, but nothing will compare to the €5 you spend on your japa beads. Hare Krishna, Barbara, welcome. Christe says, I could say the same thing. In beginning, I questioned Krishna consciousness, one to explore other paths, just to find out they all have the same conclusion. The one described in Shastra, figuring this out makes life way more peaceful. All paths have one conclusion, love Krishna, right? I mean, Prabhupada made everything simple. And Ajay Nitai says, sometimes devotees are treated so badly because they want to sincerely serve, because as some say, you get in temple politics that Maya attacked you. They get burnt. How should devotees avoid such challenges? I'm not sure what the specifics of what you're talking about, but as a general principle, it's kind of like fighting a battle. Stay away from the bullets. Or boxing, move your head when they punch you. Move your head back so it doesn't hit you. Because sometimes you get your nose and you get hit. So we want to protect our Krishna consciousness, right? So you have to protect your Krishna consciousness no matter what, right? So sometimes better just keep your nose to the grindstone, as they say. Just keep fixed on your service. If being involved in some difficulty in the temple is too disturbing, better just don't worry about it. We all have a certain threshold, and some of us can handle more than others, and know your threshold and what you can handle. And if it's too much, back off, because you'll get damaged. I think that's common sense. Isn't it? Like, the overriding principle of bhakti, but really for anything in life, is if you want to achieve something, then don't do anything or put yourself in any situation in which you would make it difficult for yourself or impossible to achieve that goal, or in which the situation would be so disturbing that you would lose your enthusiasm to achieve that goal. So I think that's a general principle which is valid for anything. Let's say I'm an athlete, I'm training for something, and I have some friends who stay up late and drink. Then I'm just going to distance myself while I'm training, because if I'm with them, then I may do that also. So that's just the way the world works. So gravitate towards those people and situations that help you, and distance yourself from people and situations that are harmful. And what's harmful for you may not be harmful for someone else, and vice versa. So there's not necessarily an absolute standard that this is going to be harmful for everyone, but for some of us it will be. And it may be our own defect, it may be our own nature. And some situations will be harmful for everyone. So we have to have that sense, that sense of knowing how to maintain my Krishna consciousness in a healthy way. And maybe something needs to be changed within a temple, and in order to do that, it would be so draining or disturbing that it's just better I don't. Not knowing your situation, that's the best I can say. Krishna Karshini says, I believe the problem is that many devotees have too high expectations toward ISKCON and other devotees and themselves. We have to be real that ISKCON is not perfect and devotees are not perfect. Otherwise, we will end up discouraged. Yes, Prabhupada often said that just because someone isn't perfect, you don't want to minimize them if they're trying to be perfect, if they're in the process, if they're in the shower. You know that famous example Prabhupada gave, but it's so applicable. You're criticizing someone who's dirty while they're in the shower taking a bath. That's not really fair. And they may even come out of the shower dirty because there's dirt caught in their nails or toenails or in their ear or somewhere, or it's a stain that doesn't come off, So what can be done? But they did their best. Take the shower. So what you say is true. We have, I think maybe we could say Krishna Karshani, we're dehumanizing people. Dehumanizing especially more advanced devotees. That they're some like fictional character that knows everything and does no wrong. Yeah, sometimes even an advanced devotee may do something which would upset you or upset another person. Not consciously, but it can happen. Or make a decision which was not the best decision. I have a funny story I want to tell because it's so educational. And especially for those of you who are newer to the movement, I think this story will really help you because it gives some history. And it's kind of a sociological the social psychology study. And this story was told by Hridayananda Maharaj. Hridayananda Maharaj was a student at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, and he dropped out. Maybe he was in his third year or fourth year. Probably his third year. And he dropped out of the university and moved in full time. And Prabhupada actually told him to finish his education, but it didn't, at that point, didn't make sense to him. And he later was given an instruction by Prabhupada to preach in the academic world, start a institution, I think, university or something. And so he decided in 1984, it must have been earlier or later. Must have been the late 80s, early 90s that he actually went to university, late 80s. So he decided he was going to go back and get a degree. And that way he could work in the academic community and have a greater influence. And he tells a story, it's so funny. He was GBC in Portugal. So the news got out that he's going back to university. And the devotees in Portugal wrote him a letter and said, "Dear Maharaj, we understand you're having some spiritual difficulties. And why don't you come to Brazil? We'll take care of you. We'll help you, whatever it is, get back on your feet." That kind of letter. That's interesting, right? That in that point in ISKCON, going to university was considered complete, unadulterated Maya, at least for a sannyasi. Like, why would you need to go there? What would you learn? So the devotees in general didn't understand that in order to speak to the academic community, you have to be one of them. Otherwise, they don't take you seriously, and you have to speak their language. And you have to learn that language by being in the university, because there's a certain way to understand things, and they all use the same methodology, and you have to learn it and speak that language and be an expert in your particular field. So nobody understood that. So then he went on to say that in Mayapur, that year that he decided, or at the time that he decided to do that, 3 of the big leaders in ISKCON came to have a meeting with him. Knock, knock, knock. And we have to talk to you. So they came to convince him that he was in Maya because he wanted to go back to university. So, isn't that interesting? So now, we wouldn't expect this sannyasi to go back to university. Of course, now it's not a problem. So many have done it. Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and others who are not sannyasis are doing it and have done it. Some had done it before they were devotees. So now it's understood, yeah, if you want to work within the academic community, you have to be one. And so it's encouraged. So that's an example of just immature expectation. But I think it's educational, because in my experience of ISKCON, anytime something new or innovative was done by a leader that was considered typically to be the realm of Maya, there was a lot of negative feedback. And many of those things later came to be appreciated when devotees saw how it could be used. And the people doing it were Krishna conscious while they were doing it, Krishna conscious after they were doing it, and they were making people Krishna conscious. So that is a constant theme that I've seen throughout my life. When someone comes up with an idea that is very seemingly innovative, maybe not so innovative, but seemingly, it's not expected. Oh, you're a senior. It's not expected you would do that. Anyway, that just underscores what you're saying. Yeah, we're all in the shower. Then Krishna Karshani says, what to do? What to do? Kya hai? Kya hai means what to do. Kya hai? Prabhu, kya hai? What to do? When an advanced devotee did or said something that upset us. Depends what they did or said. And one way of looking at it is, of course, Trinadapi Sunichena always comes to our rescue, When when in doubt, be humble. What should I do? Punch you in the nose or be humble? Whoa. When in doubt, be humble. Take the humble path when in doubt. That's always good advice. Now, you might say that if I'm humble, the leader will mistreat me again, and possibly this mistreatment will also be given to others. And so, therefore, if I tolerate it, it will continue. It will be damaging to me. It will be damaging to others. In that case, you can be humble, but you'll have to speak up humbly. You'll have to try to do something. But you know as well as I know that in some situations, even though something may be wrong, there's nothing you can do. It's just this person is in charge. This is the way they do things. If you can't beat them, join them. Sometimes that's all you can do. Of course, in ISKCON, we have ombudsman. We have mediators. If you have an issue with someone, you can bring it up to the mediators, to the ombudsman. You can bring it up to the GBC. If GBC doesn't act, you can bring it up to the EC, Executive Committee of the GBC. So there are ways to deal with it. Obviously, first person you want to talk to is the person you're upset with. If that's not possible, and you feel the need to talk to them, you have the conflict resolution. ISKCON has a conflict resolution department. You can contact them and say, I have an issue with this person, can you mediate it? But the leader may not appreciate that you went there, which is kind of, it's a catch-22 and an unfortunate situation, because you want to create a mediation, but they don't appreciate that you went to a mediator to do it because they feel, well, now it's become more public or whatever. So not easy. It's Kali Yuga. And, sometimes we just have to accept that maybe there's nothing that we can do. And how it is how it is. And that's just a lesson I'm going to have to learn, to be somehow or other not become offensive or frustrated or angry when something which isn't ideal is going on, and pray to Krishna that it will get better. And pray to Krishna that he will give intelligence to people who could make it better. or give intelligence to me to communicate to those who could make it better, how to make it better. It's working within organizations. It's not always fun. I think it works better when you have principles to start with, foundational norms which everyone agrees to follow, which would include norms of communication and how to deal with others when there's disagreement. That would help. But a lot of temples don't have that protocol. And in a more top-heavy temple, basically the temple president will decide what's right and wrong. He'll have some help from a council, but sometimes the rank and file, they don't have much to say. Being in a woman's body doesn't make it any easier. Being a younger devotee makes it even more difficult. Being younger in age makes it more difficult. But these are typical. This is just typical of how the world works. The younger you are and the more female you are, the less people respect your voice until, unless you're walking around with 3 PhDs and 5 million hits on your TED Talk, maybe then they'll listen. And, successful practice as a counselor or you're a professor or something. But even that's no guarantee. This world doesn't make sense. That's all I can say. Like I read an article that what you have in the corporate world today is people are so well trained and so specialized that CEOs are hiring people that know a whole lot more than they do about specific areas of their company's business. And for some CEOs, it's hard to listen to some 22-year-old that just graduated university and you're 70 years old. And you say, what is this kid going to tell me? But he studied a particular field that you didn't study, so he knows more, or he's more up on the current trends than you are. And so typically, it's difficult for older people who are experienced in the world to listen to younger people. And that's inside ISKCON, outside of ISKCON. I'm not condoning that. I'm actually condemning it. That good leaders need to learn. That's a sign that they're a good leader. And the leader there's a company in India. It's a huge IT company. I forget the name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sounds like Cisco, I think, or something. But anyway, it's probably the biggest IT company in India. And they spoke to the leader, and the leader said, all of us leaders will go to a workshop, and the workshop will be given by one of our employees who's very young but very expert. And we all go, and we all listen, and we all learn. He said humility is very, very important for a leader. So I appreciate that. So that's the lesson. If you become a leader, be humble and listen. Well, Krishna Karshani is saying, well, no, we're going down. I have to. I'm losing. Krishna Karshani said, usually a young devotee will lose. Yeah, I think, there's some validity to that in the sense young devotee may not know. But when you're talking about strictly, you're talking about material things, and why would a temple leader specifically know more than a younger person? Not necessarily. It doesn't follow logically. Spiritually, they would know more. So spiritually, yeah, they'll probably lose spiritually because the leader would be more insightful spiritually. Although it's not impossible that the younger devotee may have some insight that the leader didn't have. But materially speaking, if the leader doesn't have, the leader should listen. He can learn. At least, if he doesn't agree, at least listen. So, that's necessary. Jaini Tai, is it wrong to think that Prabhupada's books are the highest philosophy, but his letters are the way where you can learn practical things. To some degree, yeah. But look at the letters we're reading. It's the letters we're reading in these classes on this topic. There's nothing practical. It's all philosophy, 100%. Everything we're reading is. I don't remember any like practical, so much practical application. And if there is, it's all within the context of philosophy. So some devotees say, you know, when Prabhupada wrote his books, he really thought what he was going to say, and the letters just are letters. And I can agree with that, but I can honestly say I never distinguished between where Prabhupada said something and how he said it, unless it was very contextual. But if it was general philosophy, I never really felt that what he's saying in his letters would be in any way inferior. Like, it's like saying, well, these basic points of philosophy he has to think over deeply. No, he doesn't have to think over deeply. He understands it perfectly. Doesn't have to think it, he knows it. At least that's how I've always felt. And the effect that Prabhupada's letters has had on me, as you say, their practical application is there, but also in philosophy, I've never felt it had an inferior effect on my understanding of philosophy. And if it's contextual, we can understand it because it's a practical instruction. You do this, you don't do that. So we can understand, okay, Prabhupada's telling this devotee to do something. Maybe it's not applicable to everyone. Maybe it is, and sometimes the context is obvious, it's universal. What can I, how do I offer my food? Can I eat this in this situation? I go to school, can I eat from the cafeteria? So it gives some instruction. Okay, this is what you do, chant the mantras in your mind. Okay, that we can all do. It's not specific to that one student. But some are more obvious. It's two devotees having a fight, and you tell, you should go to this temple and he can go to that temple. But there's a principle there. If you can't get along, work on separate projects. So anyway, personally, I've found the letters to be so important. And it seems that there are some things philosophically that are in the letters that are more elaborately explained than in the books, in some cases. That's interesting. But what you say about practical, it's true, because most of the encouragement for book distribution and the things Prabhupada said about it are in his letters and conversations, not in his books. Very few in his books. And so there are some topics where very few things are said in the books. Most of it is said in conversations and letters. So that's interesting. And many, many, many of the books devotees write, you will see they quote the letters. Even the people who say the books are most important, but if you go to their books, you'll see they're quoting the letters as much as the books. Maybe even more, because there are practical instructions there. So that is a discussion of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics. What are the how to understand, how to come to conclusions. Do you come to conclusions only from Bhagavatam, or only Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita? And if there's a contradiction, do you accept Chaitanya Charitamrita because it's the postgraduate? And, questions like that. And what is the position of the letters, conversations, morning walks? That's hermeneutics. But I'm only speaking personally, that I never in my life ever looked at anything Prabhupada said and said, okay, well, we'll put that on the second tier, which means, I can give some credence to it, but I don't really have to give full credence to it. That never made sense to my mind. Now, I think the point is, Prabhupada says something in his books, something in his letters, it's contradictory. Then you might say, okay, well, in the books we know. It's in the book, so it's in the book. It's in the letter. You don't know the context. We don't have the letter. So it appears to be contradictory. If we can't resolve the contradiction philosophically, say, okay, we'll go with the books. That's understandable. But in general, I never found that any of the instructions were any lesser. I think Prabhupada felt that everything he wanted to say was in his books. So these other instructions are kind of corollary. And that may be true. He didn't feel there was any more to say that he hadn't said. But personally, I don't experience it that way. I experience they're very valuable. That's my personal realization. ISKCON is the Prabhupada body, and by criticizing his institution, for which he has worked enormously, one risks directly criticizing Prabhupada. There can certainly be flaws, shortcomings, and failures, but we should always be proactive and see the glass half full. We're not looking at the spots on the moon, so to speak. When we see that something or someone is bothering us, we should be tolerant and not think that the problem is everywhere in ISKCON or that all devotees in ISKCON are the same. It's true. We have thousands of devotees. They're not all the same. Some are more experienced than others. And some who are less experienced will become more experienced. Janitai says, I know a devotee who got divorced, and everyone favors the woman coming to the temple, including temple president, and the devotee stopped coming to the temple because of hostile environment. How should he keep himself motivated as a devotee? Well, we should find out what he did that they find it so atrocious. I'm not saying he didn't do something bad, but he should find out what he did. And see if he can make some amends so that he can come to the temple. Obviously, if he can't, then he needs to find association in a Bhakti Vriksha program or another temple. I don't know what he did. Maybe he was physically violent. And the temple wants to establish a policy that if you're going to treat your wife like that, we're not going to condone that. So that's, it's up to the temple to decide how they want to deal with it. It's a catch-22, because let's say that were the case, he would, you need devotional service to purify you. So you have this problem. You say, you can't come to the temple because you did this. And in some cases, that's valid. We do have to protect people, and we may have to not let them come, or we want to make a statement that this is wrong, and if you can just, beat your wife up and it's come to the temple and Haribo Prabhu passed the pakoras, there's something wrong with that. So it could be a statement that has to be made. At the same time, how does one become purified if they don't get the association? So this is, management has to deal with this. It's a managerial question that has philosophical implications. But, what's the best punishment? Okay, go wash the pots. In other words, go peel the potatoes. Punishment in the military. I always say you have to do kitchen duty. All right, so do kitchen duty. You committed some great offense or crime or sin. Okay, don't give class. Don't do pujari work. Just peel potatoes and clean pots. Do devotional service. That is a philosophical point. But some cases it may not be proper that the person's allowed to come. I don't know the situation. So we have 10 minutes. We can read some more. Okay. Well, this is the same letter where Prabhupada saying I didn't become discouraged. So you must become convinced like this too. By preaching and having Sankirtan, you'll very quickly attain the supreme perfection of life. Yeah, we read that. Okay, so this question, next letter is from, written in February of 72. I'm answering your questions as follows. You have inquired, why if the devotee is struggling very hard to be free from the clutches of Maya, then how can he not be interested in such liberation? That is a contradiction. I guess the question is, some devotees trying to be Krishna conscious very hard. At the same time, they're not that serious about being liberated, not that interested. It seems to be a contradiction that if I'm trying hard, I would be interested. Prabhupada replies, the devotee is not interested in liberation, but in serving. As such, the devotee is already liberated. Oh, I get it. Because Prabhupada said the devotee is not interested in liberation. So this devotee is saying, if he's working every day to stay away from Maya, how do we say he's not interested in liberation? So Prabhupada says, we're not interested in liberation, but in serving. As such, the devotee is already liberated. Liberation is not a very important business. It doesn't matter liberated or non-liberated. The idea is that nobody should serve Krishna with a motive. Even up to liberation, he should serve for the service sake. Liberation from Maya means engaging himself in the service of the Lord. So one should strive to become a servant of the Supreme. And in that position, he is automatically liberated and free from the clutches of Maya. So when it is said that one should strive to be free from the clutches of Maya, it is simply another way of saying one should strive to be a servant of the Lord. Not that being free from Maya is the goal of striving, but serving is the goal. So this, I think we discussed this the other day, because we talk a lot about getting out of Maya, running away from Maya. Don't let Maya grab you. Be careful. Have your weapons to fight with Maya. And so that's there maybe in an analytical sense. We analyze how Maya is working on us and, what our tactics are. But we read the other day, Prabhupada said, well, Maya's going to grab you, so you have to grab onto Krishna. And so here Prabhupada says it in another way, and I will read it again. So when it is said that one should strive to be free from the clutches of Maya, it's simply another way of saying one should strive to be a servant of the Lord. Not that being free from Maya is the goal of striving, but that the serving is the goal. Liberation is the constitutional position of the living entity, and that constitutional position is that the Lord is great, and that the living entity is subordinate and servant of the Lord. So one should try to extricate himself from the clutches of Maya in order to regain his healthy, normal condition as servant of Krishna, not just to get himself liberated, but once in this service, he is liberated already. Try to understand. Yeah. So it's like liberation is a byproduct. We want to serve. So if you're worried about being in Maya, then worry about serving Krishna. Then you won't have to worry about being in Maya. If you're worried about liberation, worry about serving Krishna, you'll be liberated. So that was the point. And so I think that's a well-taken point. Ultimately, it's not that as devotees we're trying to run away from Maya. Although, in a sense, you can say that. Maya's all around us trying to lure us, so we detach from it. But ultimately, we understand. Shelter in Krishna consciousness. That's it. That's how you get free from Maya. So Prabhupada just emphasizing that. You all understand that, but I thought this was important because the discussions that we've been having have been more in the term of kind of defense rather than being offensive or proactive. Here's a nice one. This is from, we're skipping up to July of 1973. Yeah. And because we are not at the stage where we can chant and do nothing else all day, there are so many engagements. So you have sufficient engagement there. Because if we are not, he's asking, so you have sufficient engagement there? Because if we are not full-time engaged, then the mind is free to do its fickle business of rejection and acceptance for sense gratification. Maya will immediately enter. We do not even have to call her. The moment we are not absorbed in Krishna's devotional service. Now this is interesting because I would always say, like, we're inviting Maya to come into our lives. You know, we're open. We're like, in a sense, inviting Maya. And here Prabhupada's saying, you know how you invite her. You don't even have to call her. You just have to be waiting for her and she'll come. She really, in a sense, although we say she never comes uninvited, the invitation is subtle. That's what Prabhupada's saying. You don't have to call her. The moment you're not absorbed in Krishna service, she figures, oh, I guess you want me. Because right now you're just sitting around thinking how to do something other than devotional service. So that's my calling card. You got me, I'm here. Well, I'm the genie in the bottle. How can I serve you? So I thought that was interesting. We do not even have to call her. The moment we are not absorbed in Krishna's service, she comes. Maya will enter immediately. The moment we are not absorbed in Krishna's service, we do not even have to call her. Wow. Another way of saying that is when we're not engaged in Krishna's service, we're actually calling her. We're sending the signal. So don't send the signal, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise she'll come. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Jai Radhe. Love pakoras. Pakoras are appearing in class. Pakoras appear. Pakoras and halava and sweet rice. Devotees aren't supposed to wish to be liberated. There are those 5 stages, but a pure devotee shouldn't desire any of those apart from serving forever, no matter where and how they were born, where they'll be born in the next life. Is that correct? Yeah, if you're a pure devotee, it's correct. And if you're not a pure devotee, you should desire to get out of here, ASAP. And as you advance, you will realize that you are liberated, and you won't even care to get out of here. So you have to be true to your. You have to be true to your status in Krishna consciousness. True to your position. Yeah. So could be artificial in a certain stage of devotional service to think, well, I don't want to get out of here. But Prabhupada's stating, he's defining that a pure devotee, or in pure devotional service, you just want service, heaven or hell. But for neophytes, beginners, Prabhupada often said you should want to go back to Godhead. It's right there in Bhagavad Gita. We should be captivated. We should want to get out of here. Get me out of this place. If it's the last thing I ever do. You know that song? By the Animals, I think it was. We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do. So that's the way a devotee feels in the beginning. You know, just, finally came to Krishna consciousness, what a relief. Get me out of the material world. I just want to go back to Krishna. Then later, when you're more advanced, you realize you actually are out of the material world. You are with Krishna, so you wouldn't desire liberation anymore because you're already liberated. But until you're on that stage, then you would desire to get out of here. And that would be a good desire for that level of realization. I'm also thinking when Kamsa was killed, he attained Sarupya even though he never strived to serve Krishna. He was only obsessed with thoughts. Yeah, but he was destined for 3 lives as a demon, and it was all over. Yeah, so, if you're killed by Krishna, and while Krishna's killing you, you think, oh my God, you're so beautiful. I love you so much. Yeah, you're good. You'll go back. You'll get your eternal form. But if Krishna's killing you and you think, who's this guy killing me? I'm going to fight. You don't realize he's Krishna. Then you only get Brahman. So those who appreciate Krishna, when he kills them, they get their eternal form. So that's it. Time's up. Party's over until Wednesday. I think that's all that's happening today. Let us check. Oh, well, there's japa in an hour and a half. Actually, japa is starting at 10, I believe, and I will come around 11. 2 days, the 7th. Yeah, nothing else today. Tomorrow, I have a meeting, and then back on Wednesday. And Wednesday at 1:30, I'm doing a class on beliefs. Wow. For people in London. Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you all for coming. Nice to see you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.